Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Liu Fan from China and now study in Hosei University in Japan. I'm very honored and proud to have this opportunity to be able to attend this meeting. Today, I would like to present my paper, Study on Space Evaluation using VR and AR.
This study examines the experience of architecture spaces and their evaluation using AR and VR. In this study, we developed AR models of the Hans Helsing, the row house in Smilj, the Farnsworth house, and the VR model of ICGG2020 Munich. House Helsing is a wooden house with a width of only 2.4 meters and the height of 2.25 meters. The row house in Smilj is a concrete building with a width of only 3.5 meters and a height of 2.25 meters. The Farnsworth house uses clear floor-to-ceiling glass and steel along with white paint. Its height is 2.85 meters, wide is 8.8 meters. In the main hall of Geographic Munich, there is a 2.1 meters low ceiling space, which connects to a 5.1 meter high ceiling space. Because of the emotion and interactivity, virtual reality VR and augmented reality AR has been garnering more and more attention since their inception. Now, VR and AR are widely used in games, retail, medical, and other fields. In architecture study, it's important to experience the architecture space in person. But you can't completely study or understand the characteristics of the architecture space just via pictures or construction drawings. Using AR and VR enables us to construct all architecture spaces that we want wherever and whenever we are. They can easily bring a whole new experience of space to the users, which they hardly experience in the real world. In the experiment of space representation of AR, the examinees were 203 architecture major students, and the experiment was conducted in 2019 and 2020. All the examinees experienced the three AR houses. The size of AR space is the same as the original size. That was done to ensure that what you see from the AR app is the same as the real architectures. The examinees had studied these three architectures and had a certain degree of knowledge about them. They can use mobile phones to scan the QR code and get the interior spatial models of the three architectures on mobile phones. Next, they can stroll around the spatial models to experience the actual size of the architectures. After that, the questionnaires will be issued to them. Through the questionnaires, we can know whether the space showed in AR is different than they thought or not. Here is the results. From the results, it is considered that the narrow space and the low ceiling height, such as the Hans Helsing and the row house in Smilj, could be well recognized by the experience with AR. However, in Farnsworth house, which has a large space and a high ceiling, examiners has a different opinions of the space by AR. Therefore, we think AR can realistically express the narrowness of the room and the low of ceiling. In order to prove the texture could influence people
to perceive the height of ceiling and the width of the space in AR models.
We present the examiners to experience two types of space in Hans-Helsing and the row house in Sumiyoshi. One is with the original texture, and the other with no texture. Here is the result. In Warden Hans-Helsing, no texture space was perceived wider and higher than the original texture. On the other hand, the difference between the no texture space and original texture space has no obvious tendency in the row house in Sumiyoshi, which is made of polished concrete. Therefore, texture is more active in organic space with word processing. In VR experiment, in order to verify the effect of the low ceiling of the Gyokakuen Myonichika, the examiners were asked to use the simplified model of Gyokakuen Myonichika to walk from the low ceiling space to the high ceiling space and observe it firstly. Then they will experience the space without low ceiling. Finally, the examiners used the VR tools to adjust the width and the depth of the high ceiling space to match the imprecisions of how they felt at the first step. The experiment was constricted on 24 architecture professionals aged between 18 and 32 between June and December in 2019. For the low ceiling space, 3 types of VR models with different ceiling heights, such as 2.1 meters, 2.4 meters, and 3 meters, were given. Here is the result. The actual size, both of width and the height, of the original model was set as 1. From the result, it can be seen that the lower the ceiling is, the higher and wider the high ceiling space is perceived. We can consider that VR is a virtual space experience, which can clearly show the change of ceiling height and the spatial characteristics of the building. From the experimental results, the low ceiling has the effect of enriching the space connected with it. An experiment was constructed to prove the effect of textures in VR. The space evolution experiment was performed in November 2019, and the examiners were 18 architecture students aged between 22 and 31. The first experiment was conducted separately in the VR of the original texture model with the low ceiling. Then, the height of ceiling was tripled. Next, they used the VR toys to adjust the height of the high ceiling space to match the impression of how they felt at the first step. Same experiments were performed by expressing the no texture space. Moreover, same experiments were conducted with the high ceiling. Whether the texture emphasizes the size of space or the height of the ceiling or not, it varies greatly from person to person, and there is no clear inclination. However, if we pay attention to the deviation value, we can find the deviation value is larger without texture and less with texture. It means, with texture, the examiner has a better understanding of the spatial morphology. From this, I think the texture in Gyokakuen Myonichika has the effect of clarifying the spatial form and making the characteristics of the space stand out more. From this study, we can draw the following conclusions. In the experiments of Hans Helsing, the row house in Smilsy, and the Farnsworth house, the narrow space and the low ceiling can be evaluated well by AR. The scale of a space with organic texture, such as wood, can be evaluated well by AR. We confirmed that the low ceiling will make the space and the plane direction below look more abundant of the Geogakuen can be elevated well with AR. In VR, textures make it easier to understand the scale of the space. Now, I want to introduce the study which I am working on to you. From the previous study, we learned that those spaces, just like Hans Helsing and the row house in Smilsy, with a narrow interior and low ceiling, AR tends to feel more realistic. But in a larger space, AR is not very practical. Therefore, we want to know how can VR help us when expressing a large space. For this purpose, we have developed two VR models with a large internal space, Phillips Exeter Academy Library, and Pantheon. Phillips Exeter Academy Library's courtyard is a cube space with a side length of 10 meters and a height of 21 meters. Pantheon is a hemispherical dome with a diameter of 33.2 meters and a height of 43.2 meters. In this experiment, we will let the examiners have an initial expression of these two architecture spaces through drawings, photos, and 3D models. And then let them experience the difference between the VR space computations and their own impressions of space and make evaluation. Then, in order to understand the characteristics of the different types of space, we developed three groups of pure space for examiners. It includes the evolution of the same volume, different forms of space, the evolution of cube space with the same volume and different height, and the evaluation of cube space with the same bottom area and different height. The value of the reference space is 100, and then make a numerical evaluation of other space. Then, in order to understand the impact of light environment on space, we developed two sets of models, including different color temperatures and different brightness. And we also want to know the effect of different textures in VR. The examiners will use the adjectives to describe the impression of the space they have just experienced, and then analyze the results on the questionnaires. This is all for today. Thank you very much for listening.